Hyunwoo Park looked out the small window of the transport ship as it moved toward the massive space station. The station was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It looked like a small city floating in space, with bright lights and huge metal towers reaching in all directions. This was the Galactic Council Station, and today would be the most important day in human history. He was a quiet man in his 40s with gray hair at the sides and small glasses. He wore a simple black suit that made him look like a teacher or an office worker. Most people who saw him thought he was just another boring diplomat. They were wrong about that, but Hyunwoo was happy to let them think so. "Sir, we will arrive in 10 minutes, said So-Jin Kim, the young woman sitting across from him. She was his helper on this mission. She had been studying alien cultures for years and knew more about the different species than anyone else on Earth. But this was her first time meeting them in person, and Hyunwoo could see she was nervous. "Everything will be fine," Hyunwoo told her with a gentle smile. "Just remember what we practiced. Be polite, listen more than you speak, and never show fear." So-Jin nodded and looked down at her notes again. She had read them 100 times, but it made her feel better to keep checking. The paper had information about all the important alien leaders they would meet today. There were over 200 different species in the Galactic Council, and each one had their own culture and rules. The transport ship docked with the station with a soft bump. Hyunwoo stood up and straightened his tie. He picked up the small, black case that held Earth's formal request to join the Galactic Council. This moment had been planned for 30 years, ever since humans first made contact with aliens. The doors opened, and they stepped into the station. Hyunwoo had seen pictures before, but being here was different. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. Strange beings walked past them in all directions. Some looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Others had too many arms or eyes in weird places. A few floated in the air without touching the ground. Many of the aliens stopped and stared at the 2 humans. Hyunwoo could feel their eyes watching every step he took. Some looked curious, but others seemed angry or disgusted. He had expected this. Humans were new here, and many of the older species did not want them around. "This way, please," said a tall blue alien with 4 arms. It was their guide to the main council chamber. As they walked through the long hallways, the guide explained the basic rules. No sudden movements, no loud voices, no touching unless invited. The Vorthak delegation sits in Section 12. They do not like humans very much, so be careful around them. Hyunwoo nodded and made mental notes about everything he saw. He noticed where all the exits were. He saw the security cameras and the armed guards. He counted how many steps it took to get from one place to another. These were old habits, from his previous job, habits that had kept him alive in dangerous places. Even though he was a diplomat now, some things never changed. The council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like a huge bowl, with seats going up in circles around a center stage. Each section was designed for different types of aliens. Some needed water to breathe. Others needed different gravity or temperature. The humans had been given a small section near the back, which Hyunwoo knew was not an accident. It was a way to show that humans were not important yet. As they took their seats, Hyunwoo studied the other delegations. The Vorthak Empire had the biggest section. They looked like warriors, with thick armor and weapons hanging from their belts. Their leader was a huge creature called General Krexthor. He had red eyes and sharp teeth, and he kept looking at the human section with obvious hatred. The Thessian collective sat in the most honored position, right in front of the stage. They were the oldest species in the galaxy and had been around for thousands of years. Their leader was an ancient being called Elder Zixandra. She looked like a tall, thin human, but with silver skin and eyes that seemed to glow. The Zephyrian trade union had golden uniforms and lots of expensive jewelry. They controlled most of the trade routes between star systems and were always looking for new ways to make money. Their leader kept checking a small device that showed stock prices from across the galaxy. A loud sound filled the chamber, and everyone became quiet. The ceremony was starting. One by one, different species gave speeches about the importance of the Galactic Council and the need for peace between all beings. Hyun-woo listened carefully, but he also watched how the speakers moved and where they looked. Body language was the same everywhere, even among aliens. Finally, it was his turn to speak. Hyun-woo walked slowly to the center stage, carrying his black case. He could feel hundreds of eyes watching him. Some of the aliens whispered to each other as he passed. He heard words like primitive and dangerous in several different languages. He opened his case and took out a small device that would translate his words into every language in the chamber. Then he began to speak in a calm, friendly voice. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said, "I am Hyun-woo Park, representing the people of Earth. We come to you today not as conquerors or competitors, but as friends who want to learn and grow together with you." He talked about humanity's history, their mistakes and their progress. He spoke about their desire for peace and their willingness to follow the Council's rules. He promised that humans would be good members who would help make the galaxy a better place for everyone. But even as he spoke these peaceful words, Hyun-woo was watching the audience carefully. He saw General Krexthor lean over and whisper something to his officers. He noticed Elder Zixandra's expression change from bored to interested when he mentioned human technology. The Zephyrian leader started typing quickly on his device, probably calculating how much money they could make from trade with Earth. When Hyun-woo finished his speech, there was polite clapping from about half the chamber. The other half sat in silence. A few delegations, including the Vorthak, actually turned their backs to show their disapproval. As Hyun-woo walked back to his seat, he passed close to the Vorthak section. General Krexthor stood up and blocked his path. "You speak pretty words, human," the general said in a deep, threatening voice. "But we know what your species really is. You are warriors and killers just like us. The difference is that we are honest about it." Hyun-woo stopped and looked up at the huge alien. Even though the general was twice his size and obviously dangerous, Hyun-woo showed no fear. He adjusted his glasses and smiled politely. "General, I think you might be mistaken about humans," he said quietly. "We prefer peace to war, always." General Krexthor laughed, a sound like metal scraping against metal. "We will see about that," he said, and sat back down. Hyun-woo returned to his seat next to So-jin, who looked worried. "That did not go well," she whispered. Hyun-woo put on his glasses and opened his notebook. "Actually," he said softly, "it went exactly as I expected." The next 3 days passed slowly for Hyun-woo and So-jin. They attended meeting after meeting, listening to different alien species talk about trade agreements, territory disputes, and galactic law. Most of the time, the other delegates acted like the humans were not even there. Hyun-woo did not mind being ignored. It gave him time to watch and learn. He saw how the different groups worked together and which species did not like each other. He noticed that several delegations kept having private meetings without inviting the humans. During breakfast on the second day, So-Jin came back from the food area looking upset. "I heard something strange," she whispered to Hyun-woo. "3 Zephyrian traders were talking about humans. They said something about the human problem and how it needed to be solved quickly." Hyun-woo continued eating his meal calmly. "What else did they say?" "They mentioned the Vorthak and something about a plan, but they stopped talking when they saw me coming." That afternoon, Hyun-woo attended a smaller meeting about mining rights in the outer systems. Only 12 species were there, including the Vorthak and the Thessians. As the meeting went on, Hyun-woo realized that none of these species had supported humanity's application to join the council. During a break, Elder Zixandra approached him. She was very tall and moved like a dancer, even though she was thousands of years old. Her silver skin seemed to glow in the station's lights. "Mr. Park," she said in a voice that sounded like music, "I wonder if we could speak privately." They walked to a quiet corner where no one could hear them. The elder looked around carefully before speaking. "I have lived for 3,000 years, she said. In that time I have seen many species join our council. Most of them are peaceful farmers or traders. But humans are different." "How so?" Hyun-woo asked politely. "Your species spreads very quickly across the galaxy. In just 50 years you have built colonies on 20 different worlds. You develop new technology faster than any species we have ever seen. Some members of the council find this concerning." Hyun-woo nodded. "Change can be frightening, but we only want to be good neighbors." The elder smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Mr. Park, there are those who believe that good neighbors sometimes need to be kept in their place. The Vorthak have been studying your military capabilities. They think humans might become a threat in the future." "And what do you think, Elder?" "I think," she said slowly, "that the Vorthak are planning to make sure humans never become a threat at all. They have convinced several other species to join them. They call it preventive action." Hyun-woo felt something cold in his stomach, but his face remained calm. "That would be unfortunate for everyone involved." "Indeed it would," the elder agreed. "I wanted to warn you because I believe in fair play. What happens next is up to you." That evening, Hyun-woo and So-Jin had dinner in their quarters. The food was strange but not bad. As they ate, So-Jin shared what she had learned from talking to other junior diplomats. "The Rokarian delegate told me something interesting," she said. "He said his government received a message from the Vorthak asking about human weaknesses. The Vorthak wanted to know about our biology, our technology, and our military organization." "What did the Rokarians tell them?" "Nothing, because they do not know much about us. But the delegate said the Vorthak were asking everyone the same questions. They have been planning something for months." Hyun-woo put down his fork and thought carefully. He had suspected this might happen. Many species feared change, and humans represented a big change to the galactic order. "So-Jin," he said quietly, "I want you to send a message to Earth tonight. Use the emergency code that Ambassador Chen taught you. Tell them that we might need backup soon." So-Jin looked worried. "Do you think they will really try to hurt us?" "I think they will try to make an example of us. They want to show other species what happens when you challenge the established order." After dinner, Hyun-woo walked around the station's public areas. He wanted to see if anyone was following him or watching him too closely. The station was like a small city with shops, restaurants, and entertainment areas. Aliens from dozens of species were eating, talking, and doing business together. As he walked past a Vorthak security post, He heard voices speaking in their language. Hyunwoo had studied many alien languages during his diplomatic training, including Vorthok. What he heard made him stop and pretend to look at a shop window. "The human delegation is in section C7, one guard was saying. 2 individuals. No visible weapons or armor." "What about their ship?" asked another guard. "Small transport, lightly armed. Nothing that could threaten our forces." "Good. When the general gives the order tomorrow, we move fast. No witnesses, no survivors." "What about the other delegations? Will they object?" "The Thessians and Zephyrians are already on board. The others will not interfere if they know what is good for them." Hyunwoo continued walking as if he had heard nothing. But his mind was racing. Tomorrow the Vorthak would try to kill him and So-Jin. They probably planned to claim it was self-defense, or that the humans had attacked first. When he returned to his quarters, So-Jin was waiting with a worried expression. "I sent the message to Earth," she said. "But I also received something for you. It came through a secure channel." She handed him a small device that could only be opened with his fingerprint. Inside was a message from Colonel Taemin Lee, his old commanding officer from his previous job. "Package compromised," the message said. "A hostile acquisition imminent. Recommend immediate extraction. Support team is 3 days out. Maintain cover until arrival." Hyunwoo read the message twice, then deleted it. 3 days was too long. Whatever the Vorthak were planning would happen tomorrow. "Sir," So-Jin said, carefully, "there is something I need to ask you. I have been working with you for 6 months, but I still do not know much about your background. Ambassador Chen told me you used to work for the military, but he would not say what you did." Hyunwoo looked at the young woman who had become like a daughter to him during their training. She was smart, brave, and dedicated to making peace between species. She deserved to know the truth. "So-Jin," he said gently, "before I became a diplomat, I had a different job. I worked for a very special unit in Earth's military. We did things that regular soldiers could not do. Dangerous things in dangerous places." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that people like you should never have to know about. But sometimes, when diplomacy fails, other skills become necessary." "So?" Jin stared at him for a long moment. "You mean you were a soldier?" "I was many things. But yes, among other things, I was a soldier." "And now?" Hyunwoo smiled his gentle smile and put his glasses back on. "Now I am a diplomat who wants peace between all species. But sometimes the best way to keep peace is to be ready for war." That night, So-Jin went to bed early, but Hyunwoo stayed awake. He sat in his chair and thought about tomorrow. He hoped the Vorthak would change their minds and choose diplomacy over violence. But if they did not, he would be ready. He opened his suitcase and moved some clothes aside. Hidden in a secret compartment was a small metal device that looked like a medical scanner. It was not a medical scanner. Hyunwoo had hoped he would never need to use his old skills again. But it looked like tomorrow would be different. He put the device back in its hiding place and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow would be a very important day for human-alien relations, one way or another. The morning alarm woke Hyunwoo at exactly 6 o'clock, just like every other day. He got up, took a shower, and put on his best diplomatic suit. As he adjusted his tie in the mirror, he looked like any other government worker getting ready for an important meeting. Only his eyes showed that he knew this day would be different. So-Jin was already awake and reading her notes when he came out of the bathroom. She had dark circles under her eyes, which meant she had not slept well. "Good morning," she said quietly. "Are you ready for today's session?" "As ready as I can be," Hyun-woo replied. He sat down and ate a simple breakfast while reviewing the day's schedule. According to the papers, they would be discussing trade regulations and mining rights. But Hyun-woo knew the real agenda would be very different. They walked to the council chamber together, just like the previous days. Other delegates nodded politely as they passed, but Hyun-woo noticed more security guards than usual. Vorthak. Soldiers stood at every corner, their weapons clearly visible. This was not normal for a peaceful trade discussion. The council chamber looked the same as always, with hundreds of aliens sitting in their assigned sections. But the atmosphere felt different. Many delegates seemed nervous or excited, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Hyun-woo and So-jin took their seats in the human section. As the morning session began, Hyun-woo noticed that several important delegates were missing. The Rokarian ambassador was not there. Neither were the representatives from 3 other smaller species who had been friendly to humans. The first speaker was a Zephyrian trade official who talked about shipping routes and tariff schedules. It was very boring, and many delegates seemed distracted. Hyun-woo watched the Vorthak section carefully. General Krexthor kept checking a small device and whispering to his officers. At exactly 10:30, something changed. All the Vorthak soldiers in the chamber moved to new positions. At the same time, they blocked every exit and stood with their hands near their weapons. Most of the other delegates did not notice, but Hyun-woo saw everything. "So-jin," he whispered without looking at her, "when I tell you to move, I want you to get behind our table and stay low. Do not ask questions, just do it." "What's wrong?" she whispered back. Before Hyun-woo could answer, a loud alarm filled the chamber. All the lights turned red, and heavy metal doors slammed shut over every exit. The chamber was now completely sealed. General Krexthor stood up in his section, and his voice boomed across the chamber through the sound system. "Attention all delegates," he announced. "We have discovered a serious security threat. The human delegation has been found guilty of espionage and planning attacks against council members. For the safety of all species, they will be executed immediately." A shocked silence filled the chamber. Then several delegates started shouting at once. Some demanded proof of these accusations. Others called for a proper trial. But the Vorthak soldiers ignored them all. 12 heavily armed Vorthak warriors entered the chamber through a side door. They wore full battle armor and carried plasma, rifles that could cut through steel. Their footsteps echoed loudly as they marched toward the human section. "This is illegal!" shouted the Thessian delegate. "You cannot execute diplomats without evidence!" "We have all the evidence we need," General Krexthor replied coldly. "These humans are dangerous to galactic peace. Their deaths will serve as a warning to others who would challenge our authority." Hyun-woo sat calmly in his chair as the soldiers surrounded him. So-jin grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Sir, what do we do?" she whispered. "Stay calm," he told her gently. "And remember what I said about getting behind the table." The leader of the Vorthak squad, a massive warrior with scars covering his armor, pointed his weapon at Hyun-woo's head. "Human diplomat," he growled. "You have been sentenced to death for crimes against the Galactic Order. Do you have any last words?" Hyun-woo looked up at the huge alien warrior. Then he slowly reached up and removed his glasses, setting them carefully on the table in front of him. For the first time since arriving at the station, his mild, diplomatic smile completely disappeared. General Krexthor walked down from his section to watch the execution personally. He wanted to make sure every delegate saw what happened to species that did not know their place. "Your mistake, human," the general said as he approached, "was thinking that words and diplomacy could protect you here. This galaxy belongs to the strong, not to the weak." Hyun-woo looked directly at the general. When he spoke, his voice was completely different from the polite, scholarly tone he had used for days. It was quiet, but somehow more dangerous than any shout. "General," he said, "I think there has been a serious misunderstanding about what kind of human you are dealing with." Something in his voice made several nearby delegates step back without knowing why. Even some of the Vorthak soldiers looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" General Krexthor demanded. Hyun-woo stood up slowly from his chair. As he did, his entire body seemed to change. His shoulders straightened, his head came up. His hands, which had looked soft and weak before, now seemed different somehow. He no longer looked like a mild diplomat. He looked like something much more dangerous. "You see, General," Hyun-woo continued in that same quiet voice, "when Earth decided to send diplomats to the Galactic Council, we had to consider the possibility that some species might not be interested in peaceful negotiations. So we made sure our diplomats had additional qualifications." The squad leader pressed his plasma rifle against Hyun-woo's temple. "Enough talk. Time to die. Move," Hyun-woo said softly to So-jin. She dove behind the table just as everything exploded into action. What happened next would be talked about across the galaxy for generations. In the space of 17 seconds, Hyun-woo Park transformed. From a quiet diplomat into the most dangerous human alive, he moved faster than anyone thought possible. His right hand shot up and grabbed the squad leader's weapon, twisting it away before the alien could fire. His left elbow drove backward into another soldier's armor with enough force to crack the metal. In one smooth motion, he spun around and used the captured rifle to shoot 3 more warriors before they could react. The Vorthak were supposed to be the galaxy's greatest warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated armies of millions. But they had never faced anything like this. Hyun-woo did not just fight them, he destroyed them. Every movement was perfect, calculated for maximum damage with minimum effort. He seemed to know exactly where each enemy would be before they moved. His combat awareness was beyond anything the watching delegates had ever seen. One soldier tried to flank him from the left. Hyun-woo caught the movement in his peripheral vision and threw his captured weapon like a spear, hitting the warrior in the chest and sending him flying into the chamber wall. Another warrior charged from behind. Without even turning around, Hyun-woo stepped aside at the last second and used the alien's own momentum to send him crashing into his teammate. Within seconds, 11 of the 12 elite Vorthak soldiers were down. Some were unconscious. Others were groaning in pain. A few were not moving at all. The last soldier, seeing his entire squad defeated by one human, dropped his weapon and ran for the exit. But the doors were still sealed. He pounded on the metal frantically, begging to be let out. General Krexthor stood frozen in shock. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. The most elite warriors in his empire had just been defeated by a single opponent who looked like a librarian. Hyun-woo picked up one of the fallen weapons and walked slowly toward the general. His diplomatic suit was barely wrinkled, though one sleeve had a small tear, where a plasma bolt had passed too close. "Now then, General," he said, his voice returning to its previous polite tone as he straightened his tie. "Shall we discuss humanity's application to the Council in a more civilized manner?" The council chamber was completely silent. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. Some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat with their mouths open, unable to believe what they had seen. General Krexthor looked down at his fallen soldiers, then back at Hyunwoo. The human stood calmly in the middle of the destruction, holding a Vorthak plasma rifle like he had been born with it. His glasses were still sitting neatly on the table where he had placed them. "This is impossible," the general whispered. "My warriors are the best in the galaxy. They have never been defeated." "They are very good," Hyunwoo agreed politely. "But they were trained to fight other armies, not individuals like me. There is a difference." Behind the overturned table, Sojin slowly lifted her head. She had heard the fighting, but could not see what happened. When she saw Hyunwoo standing alone among the fallen Vorthak soldiers, she could not believe her eyes. "Sir?" she called out softly. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine, Sojin," Hyunwoo replied without taking his eyes off the general. "You can come out now. The danger is over." Sojin stood up carefully and looked around the chamber. The Vorthak soldiers were scattered across the floor like broken toys. Some were groaning and trying to get up. Others were not moving at all. She had known Hyunwoo for months, but the man standing in front of her seemed like a completely different person. Elder Zixandra was the first delegate to find her voice. She stood up in her section and spoke in amazement. "In 3,000 years," she said, "I have never seen anything like this. Mr. Park, what exactly are you?" Hyunwoo picked up his glasses and put them back on. As he did, he seemed to change back into the mild diplomat they all remembered. But now everyone could see that the peaceful appearance had been just a mask. "I am exactly what I told you I was," he replied. "I am a diplomat representing Earth's desire for peaceful relations with all species, but I am also other things." "What other things?" demanded the Zephyrian trade leader. "Before I became a diplomat, I served in Earth's military. Specifically, I was a member of an organization called the Ghost Brigade. We were specialists in situations where normal military solutions were not possible." General Krexthor finally found his voice. "Ghost Brigade? I have never heard of this unit." "That was the point," Hyunwoo said simply. "We existed to handle problems that regular soldiers could not solve. We worked alone or in very small teams in places where larger forces would fail. Our training was extensive. The chamber's emergency communication system suddenly activated. Sojin had managed to turn it on during the fight, and now the entire Galactic Council network was receiving a live broadcast of everything happening in the chamber. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds were watching as the story unfolded. "This transmission is being sent to every council member world," announced the automated system. "All citizens have access to this emergency broadcast." General Krexthor realized that his planned secret execution had become a very public disaster. Not only had his elite soldiers been defeated, but everyone in the galaxy was watching it happen. "Turn off that transmission," he roared at his remaining guards. "I would not do that if I were you," Hyunwoo said calmly. "Transparency is very important in diplomatic relations. The galaxy should see how the Vorthak Empire treats peaceful diplomats." At that moment, the chamber's main doors suddenly exploded inward. Through the smoke came more humans, but these were clearly not diplomats. They wore black military uniforms and carried advanced weapons that none of the aliens had ever seen before. The leader of this new group was a tall man with sharp eyes and graying hair. He walked straight to Hyunwoo and saluted. "Colonel Tae-min. Lee reporting, sir. Are you injured? I am fine, Colonel, Hyun-woo replied, though our diplomatic mission has become somewhat complicated. Colonel Lee looked around at the fallen Vorthak soldiers and nodded approvingly. I see you have not lost your touch. We received Sojin's emergency message and came as quickly as we could. How did you get here so fast? General Krexthor demanded. Your nearest military base is days away. Colonel Lee smiled coldly. General, did you really think we would send our diplomats into potentially hostile territory without backup? We have been shadowing the diplomatic mission since it began. My ships are currently surrounding this station. This was news to everyone, including Hyun-woo. Earth had not told him about the military escort, probably to keep his diplomatic cover intact. How many ships? Asked Elder Zixandra. Enough, Colonel Lee replied. But we prefer peaceful solutions. That is why we sent diplomats first. General Krexthor was beginning to understand how badly he had miscalculated. You planned this, he accused. You knew we would try to stop you. We hoped you would not, Hyun-woo said honestly. We genuinely want peace with all species, but we also know that some beings only respect strength, so we prepared for both possibilities. The colonel walked over to examine the fallen Vorthak soldiers. Impressive work, he told Hyun-woo. Clean, efficient, minimal casualties. You remember, you're training well. What training? Demanded the Zephyrian delegate. Hyun-woo sighed. He had hoped to keep his background secret, but that was no longer possible. The Ghost Brigade is Earth's most elite special operations unit, he explained. We were trained to operate alone behind enemy lines, to complete impossible missions that no one else could handle. We learned to fight, to infiltrate, to survive in any environment against any enemy. How many soldiers like you does Earth have? Asked Elder Zixandra. That information is classified, Colonel Lee said firmly. But I can tell you that every human diplomat sent to other worlds has similar qualifications. We believe in being prepared. So Jin stared at Hyun-woo with new understanding. That is why you always knew where the exits were, why you watched everyone so carefully. You were not just being polite. Old habits, Hyun-woo admitted. When you have worked in dangerous places, you learn to always be ready for trouble. General Krexthor was looking around the chamber, calculating his options. His soldiers were defeated. Human warships surrounded the station. The entire galaxy was watching his humiliation on live broadcast. This is not over, he growled. The Vorthak Empire will not forget this insult. General, Hyun-woo said gently, there has been no insult here. You attacked peaceful diplomats without cause. I defended myself and my colleague. Under galactic law, I had every right to do so. You killed my warriors! Hyun-woo looked around at the fallen soldiers. Most of them were beginning to stir and get back to their feet. They were bruised and embarrassed, but not seriously hurt. Actually, I was very careful not to kill anyone, he said. I used non-lethal techniques whenever possible. Your soldiers will recover completely, though they might have some bruises for a few days. This was true. Despite the devastating speed and efficiency of his attack, Hyun-woo had calculated every strike to disable rather than kill. It was much harder to fight this way, but it showed incredible skill and control. Colonel Lee stepped forward. General Krexthor, my government is prepared to forget this incident if you are willing to discuss the matter diplomatically, but if you prefer to escalate the situation, we are ready for that as well. The general looked at the human soldiers, then at his own defeated warriors, then at the hundreds of delegates watching everything. His military mind finally accepted what his pride did not want to admit. He had lost, completely and publicly. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "The same thing we wanted yesterday," Hyun-woo replied, putting his diplomatic smile back on. "A peaceful discussion about humanity's application to join the Galactic Council. Nothing more, nothing less." 3 hours after the fight in the council chamber, representatives from every major species in the galaxy were demanding emergency meetings. The video of Hyun-woo defeating an entire squad of elite Vorthak warriors had spread across the Galactic communication network faster than anyone thought possible. Hyun-woo sat in a small conference room with So-jin and Colonel Lee, drinking tea and reading reports on his tablet. He looked exactly like the quiet diplomat he had been 3 days ago, except now everyone knew what lay beneath the surface. The intelligence services of 12 different species have contacted Earth in the last hour, Colonel Lee reported. "They all want to know the same thing? How many soldiers like you do we have?" "And what did Earth tell them?" Hyun-woo asked. "Nothing useful. But they are all very worried now. The Zephyrians have quadrupled their security budget. The Thessians are asking about military cooperation agreements. Even the peaceful farming worlds are suddenly interested in defense treaties with humanity." So Jin looked up from her own tablet. "The news networks are calling you the most dangerous diplomat in galactic history. Some are saying this changes everything about how species will interact with each other." "That was not my intention," Hyun-woo said honestly. "I just wanted to attend some meetings and fill out paperwork." There was a knock on the door, and Elder Zix-Andra entered. She moved with her usual grace, but Hyun-woo could see new respect in her ancient eyes. "Mr. Park," she said, "the emergency session of the Galactic Council will begin in 1 hour. Every species wants to discuss humanity's application immediately." "I am ready whenever they are," Hyun-woo replied. "There is something else," the elder continued. "General Krexthor has requested a private meeting with you before the session begins. He says it is a matter of honor." Colonel Lee frowned. "It could be a trap." "No," Hyun-woo said, standing up. "The general is a warrior. He was defeated fairly in front of his peers. He needs to resolve this properly, or he will lose all credibility with his own people." 10 minutes later, Hyun-woo entered another conference room where General Krexthor waited alone. The huge Vorthak looked very different from the confident leader who had tried to execute him earlier. His armor was dented, and his pride was clearly damaged. "You fought with honor," the general said without introduction. "I have never seen combat skills like yours." "You fought with courage," Hyun-woo replied diplomatically. "Your warriors are well trained." "They are children compared to you," the general said bluntly. "I have spent my entire life studying warfare, and I thought I understood what made a dangerous opponent. I was wrong." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, measuring each other. Finally, the general spoke again. "My intelligence services have been studying humanity for months. We thought you were primitive because you are new to space travel. We thought you were weak because you spoke of peace. We were wrong about everything." "General, humans are not naturally warlike," Hyun-woo said carefully. "But we have had many wars throughout our history. We learned to be very good at fighting because we had to be. Now we prefer peace, but we remember the lessons. How many warriors like you does Earth have?" "Enough," Hyun-woo answered, using the same word Colonel Lee had used earlier. "But I hope you never have to find out exactly how many." General Krexthor nodded slowly. "I withdraw my opposition to humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. More than that, I will sponsor your application personally. That is very generous, but why? Because I respect strength, and you have shown me that humans are stronger than any species in this galaxy, not just physically, but mentally. You could have killed all my warriors easily, but you chose not to. That shows wisdom as well as power. The emergency council session began exactly on time. Every seat in the chamber was filled, and millions more beings across the galaxy watched on their communication devices. This was the most important vote in galactic history. Hyun-woo walked to the center of the chamber, carrying the same black case he had brought on the first day. But everything else had changed. Instead of whispers about primitive humans, the delegates watched him with respectful silence. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, 3 days ago, I came here as a representative of a species, hoping to join your organization. Today I stand before you as proof that appearances can be deceiving. He opened his case and took out Earth's formal application, just as he had planned to do from the beginning. Humanity offers you the same thing we offered 3 days ago: friendship, cooperation, and peaceful trade. What has changed is your understanding of what we bring to that relationship. Elder Zixandra stood up in her section. Mr. Park, the council has some questions before we vote. First, how many individuals with your capabilities does Earth possess? That information is classified for security reasons, Hyun-woo replied. But I can tell you that every human diplomat sent to other worlds has received extensive training in personal protection. We believe our representatives should be able to defend themselves if necessary. The Zephyrian delegate raised one of his 4 arms. What about your military forces? Are they all trained to the same level? Our military has many different units with different specializations. Some focus on large-scale operations. Others, like the Ghost Brigade, specialize in small unit tactics. But all of our soldiers receive thorough training. How long have you been preparing for contact with other species? Asked the representative from the Andorian Republic. Earth has been preparing for this possibility since we first achieved spaceflight, Hyun-woo answered honestly. We hoped for peace, but prepared for other possibilities as well. General Krexthor stood up in the Vorthak section. The chamber became very quiet, waiting to hear what he would say. Fellow delegates, the general announced, I was wrong about humanity. I thought they were weak because they spoke of peace. Today I learned that the strongest species are often those who choose peace not from weakness, but from a position of strength. He paused and looked directly at Hyun-woo. The Vorthak Empire formally sponsors humanity's application to join the Galactic Council. Any species that can produce diplomats like Mr. Park deserves our respect and our friendship. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Council history, every single member species voted to accept a new application. Humanity was now officially part of the galactic community. As Hyun-woo signed the membership documents, he thought about the strange path that had brought him here. He had spent years learning to kill efficiently so that others could live peacefully. Now his old skills had bought his entire species a place among the stars. So Jin approached him as the ceremony ended. Sir, what happens now? Now we do the real work, Hyun-woo replied, putting his glasses back on. Diplomacy, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, all the boring things that actually matter. Will you stay here as Earth's permanent representative? Hyun-woo looked around the chamber, where dozens of alien species were already approaching to introduce themselves and discuss future cooperation. for a while," he said with his gentle smile. "But I think Earth will be sending more diplomats soon. People with different skills for different situations. More people like you? Some like me. Some different. The galaxy is a big place with many kinds of challenges. We will need many kinds of people to meet them." That evening, Hyun-woo sat in his quarters writing his final report to Earth. Outside his window, he could see ships from a dozen different species arriving at the station. Representatives who had ignored humanity for months were now eager to establish relations. "Mission accomplished," he wrote. "Humanity has been accepted into the Galactic Council with full membership privileges. Recommend increased diplomatic security protocols for future engagements. Also suggest including combat specialists in all diplomatic training programs. The galaxy responds well to comprehensive qualifications." He paused and looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. Humanity would face many challenges as they expanded into the galaxy. There would be trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and cultural misunderstandings. But now they would face these challenges as equals, with the respect of their peers. And if diplomacy ever failed again, well, humanity would be ready for that too. Hyun-woo finished his report and sent it to Earth. Then he put on his pajamas, brushed his teeth, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new meetings, new negotiations, and new opportunities for peace. He was looking forward to it.